Hello to my online learners, and thank you for continuing the process of the brain with me. We are now at other parts of the brain. Hopefully you've not watched the first part already, so you've set up the summary table. And just to orient you again, we are going to complete or work through the rest of the summary table while working through the textbook material. There's a lot of information in this class, so there's a lot of name that part, what does it do? And that's pretty much what we're doing. We're naming it, we're looking at it, we are summarizing it. And then you're going to memorize it because that's unfortunately what we're after. Okay, so we are now looking at the cerebellum. Anytime you see the UM at the end, that is something to do with smaller. So the cerebellum is this, they say it's cauliflower shaped thing at the bottom. And what does it do? It's about the size of a fist. It houses more neurons than the rest of the brain combined. It connects the cerebral cortex by 40 million neurons. The cerebellum receives, processes messages all over the brain. Long known to play a role in motor functions, recent discoveries show the cerebellum it has a powerful role in sensory, cognitive, and emotional functions as well. Okay. It joins forces the cerebral cortex to monitor body movements, send messages for balance, coordination, and posture. Okay, we're halfway through. There's a lot of information there, so let's start with that. Cerebellum. It is at base of brain, size of fist. If you have a little diagram or sketch there, that would be great. Most neurons okay, the function. Okay, I forgot that already. The function is monitor body movements and critical for balance, coordination, and posture. So monitor body movements, balance, coordination, and posture. Okay. Good. Back to the textbook. Monitors body movements, critical for balance, coordination, and posture. Send information necessary for muscle groups to perform smooth, efficient, coordinated movements. Okay, so this is when we talk about muscle memory and how you do stuff over and over and over again so that it comes from muscle memory, and that's so that it is stored in your cerebral cortex. So, what did I just read? Smooth, efficient coordination of movement. So coordinated movements, sensory input. Okay, that's enough. Coordinated movements and sensory input. So we've kind of said coordination twice, but maybe that's important because it's listed twice. Good. So this is about muscle memory. This is basically autonomic muscle movements, not ones that you're not thinking of. This is monitoring. This is balancing. This is coordination. Okay, good. Next topic. The Diencephalon. Notice it has the word di in it, so we're looking to see two parts. Let's look at where it is first. So this white bit here, well, it would be white in your brain. This medium slashed part here is called the corpus callosum. That is the tract that connects the left hemisphere to the right hemisphere. It is the major landmark. Underneath the corpus callosum is one part of the diencephalon called the thalamus, and then below that, below is the hypothalamus. So we're going to look at the thalamus and the hypothalamus as parts of the diencephalon. Thalamus, hypothalamus. Okay, good. Back to the reading. The thalamus is egg-shaped, sitting side by side. The thalamus resides at the top of the brainstem. It acts as a gateway for nearby sensory impulse. Okay, traveling to the cerebral cortex. The thalamus processes and filters, transmitting some but not all. Relays messages regarding complex movements. It's involved in memory and emotion. So, we've heard the word relay, gateway, processor. Good. So the thalamus is, put it on the function column, relays, gateway, processes. Processes sensory. Which makes sense because it's at the top of, it's right above the spinal cord. So everything that comes into the spinal cord goes through the thalamus in order to be relayed and processed. Good. Let's look at that. Anything else? Side by side. Okay, 2 eggs sitting side by side. It's the top of the brainstem. So let's put that in the description. 2 eggs, top of brainstem. Good. Which makes sense because now its location is right there. Information's coming in from the lower body. It gets processed. Information is going down. It gets processed. Lovely. It's a process station. Okay. Reread again. It resides in the top of the brainstem. Acts as the gateway. The thalamus processes and filters. Did we put the word filter in there? I'll have to look at it. Transmitting some but not all. It also plays other roles such as regarding complex movements, a role in memory and emotion. We need to add that. Okay, emotion. Good. Safe. That is the thalamus. Now, the hypothalamus is below the thalamus. The hypothalamus is a small-sized belize. Its critical function, balizes. Okay. In fact, the tiny area of the brain extends its influence to nearly every organ of the body. The hypothalamus plays a key role in numerous functions. For example, controls the autonomic nervous system, such as heartbeat and blood pressure. Regulates the controls response for hunger, thirst, temperature. Controls the pituitary gland, often called the master gland. Oops. Controls the pituitary, involved in emotional response, fear, anger, pleasure, and aggression. So, it controls the autonomic nervous system, controls response to hunger, thirst, and temperature, controls the pituitary, and emotion. That's a lot. So the hypothalamus is small berry. Oh, we need to put another line in here because our thalamus took up too much space. Okay. So, what does it do? A lot of controlling. Controls. That's as far as I forgot. Back to the... Okay, back here. So it controls autonomic function, controls hunger and thirst and temperature, controls pituitary, controls ANS, pituitary. There was one more control. ANS, hunger, thirst, and temperature regulation. Okay, so it's a lot of controls. Controls. And we'll look at it later that the hypothalamus has the thirst center in it. If you remember back to the thirst center is in the hypothalamus, so it will send out hormones. Do you remember the hormones? Did we talk about them? We haven't talked about them. No, we haven't talked about them because we do hormones next. So stay tuned for the exciting hormone control from the hypothalamus. Ooh. Okay, is that all we need from the hypothalamus? Its influence in emotional response, fear, anger, pleasure, and aggression. Well, that makes sense because fear, anger, pleasure, and aggression will control the autonomic nervous system. Hypothalamus is done. Good. Next. The reticular formation. Ooh. We need to know this one, don't we? No, we don't. Really? The reticular formation extends from the parts of the cerebellum, cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the spinal cord. The reticulating activated system, overall awakeness and alertness. Let's just put it in, just in case. Reticulated activating system. Where is that? What's that part under? The body at work. It doesn't say. Okay, let's just put it in its own column then. And let's move it. Put a new column here. Insert. Column above. So, reticulating activation center. Reticular activating system. Reticular activating system. Someone's at my door. I'm going to pause the video here and see who's at my door because my dog's pretty excited. Okay, reticular activating system. So to summarize again, maintains a state of awakeness and alertness. Filters out insignificant signals. Drugs that depress it indicate sleep. That's basically, so it indicates state of awakeness, wakefulness, and alertness. I just like that one. It's a nice summary. Wakefulness and alertness. Now, when we talk about the description of it, it's basically a system. So it is going system. It sends impulses. It's ascending tracks, descending tracks, and green arrows. Okay, that's that one. Next on our topic is the cerebrum. Now, the cerebrum has lobes, and there's a lot of detail on the cerebrum, also called the cortex, but we don't need to know any more than that's on this book. So we have frontal lobe, which is at the front. Then there's the temporal lobe, which is kind of over the ears. The parietal lobe, which is on top. And then you've got the occipital lobe at the back. So let's add our lobes. Frontal, temporal, parietal, occipital. Parietal spelt wrong. Good. Okay. So you need to know the basic function of each. When it comes to the cerebrum, most of the cerebrum has to do with thinking. Anytime you're thinking, or cognition, or logical, or higher function. So that's what you need to think of overall. Now let's break down the difference between the frontal, temporal, parietal, and occipital. Frontal governs voluntary movements, emotion, memory, social judgment, decision-making, reasoning, aggression, sight for personality. That's all in the frontal. And in your psych course, you'll hear about Phineas Gage, the guy who, one of the early experiments with the frontal lobe, this guy somehow got a spike in his front of his brain and it changed his personality. So frontal lobe is personality, emotion, judgment, decision making. It's the higher things that supposedly make human human. Decision, personality, emotion. Okay? Good. That's, oops, I've done it again. Put the thing in the wrong column. Hopefully you're not doing the same. Okay, there we go. Now the frontal lobe, I don't want to say it, but it's the one at the front. The temporal lobe. The reason I talk about the temporal lobe being over the ear is that if you look at the temporal lobe, it's involved in hearing. So that's how I relate the two together, even though, yeah. So the temporal lobe governs hearing, smelling, memory, and emotional behavior and visual recognition, as opposed to the occipital, which is visual information. So occipital, visual information. Temporal is visual recognition, smelling, and hearing. Got it? No problem. Temporal. Remember, you just got to put down a word or two. You shouldn't be using paragraphs because that's too much to memorize. The temporal, hearing. Visual recognition, which is partly memory. I forget the other things already because my brain's not holding anything today. Smell and memory. Okay, and now we need to move our parietal lobe because we've gone past. Good. The temporal, I'll just put here that it's over the ear for location. Like I say, I don't know if you'll be labeling this in a test because, as I say, I haven't written the test yet. Okay. Occipital is hearing. No, occipital is sight. Okay. Or visual, what's the word? Visual information, analyzing and interpreting. Okay, good. And then we just have to do our other lobe, parietal. Now the parietal lobe is on the top. It is receiving and interpreting body sensations. So it governs proprioception. So it's the touch, pain, sensations. Okay, so let's just put down sensory sensations. Sensory sensations. Good, and that one's on top. Now, there's a fifth lobe they made just to make our life confusing. And the fifth lobe isn't really, well, it's inside, and it's the insula. So if you look here in the diagram, if you pull away a lobe, in between the lateral sulcus, so a sulcus, is the insula, and the insula has to do with pain and emotions and addiction. So there is, let's add that. Insula, it's underneath. And it's pain, emotions, and addiction. Okay, good. So all we have left now is a quick discussion on the limbic system, and we are done the brain, and I'm at 20 minutes. Okay, we're good. We're good. This is going on and on and on. The last one is the limbic system. All this stuff on the basal ganglia, you can read through it because it's quite fascinating. Like, how do the tracks know where to go? That's what fascinates me. The limbic system is the seat of emotion and learning, and the limbic system is made up of the hippocampus and the amygdala. Good words. So, back here, we have the hippocampus and amygdala. That is definitely spelled wrong. Amy, amygdala. Oh, actually, I didn't do too bad. Amygdala. Okay, so limbic system. What did I say? Pain and fear. Is that right? Let's see. Emotion and learning. Not even close. Okay, I'm getting tired. I think it's time to take a break. Ah, there it is. Feelings of fear, anger, sexual feelings, sorrow, and pleasure. Can we copy and paste that? Because I'm getting lazy now. But if you copy and paste, you are not connecting your other systems, so don't be too lazy. What was it? Emotion and learning. And that is enough of name that part, what does it do on the brain. So I'm just going to take a quick scan and make sure we've got it all. Oh, the limbic system is the emotional brain, and it encircles the corpus callosum and the thalamus. So it's the hippocampus. Someone thinks it looks like a horse. Hippocampus is long-term memory, and amygdala is emotions. And then we're done, because we don't need to go into any more detail on the brain, even though it goes on and on. Okay, so that's it. Okay, good. And that's the end of it for today. I'm going to show you this one more time, just so you have it. The hippocampus was long-term learning. Let's put that in there too. Well, we already said learning and emotion. And so there's our good summary table. Notice this would be really good for what type of questions? Multiple choice exam. You could match the function with the part, either of those. So take the time, go through, and now you just have words. So it should be easier to get it into your brain. Good. Okay, and that's the brain. Like I say, mainly just name that part. What does it do? Take care.